What's up, Jake Elkins? How are you, sir?
What's up, guys? How's it going, man?
I'm all right. Last we saw each other, it was in passing at the wonderful world of Tulsa. And Tulsa, for those of you that don't know, I'm obviously being facetious. Tulsa is a rare thing in this sport that continually makes me scratch my head. Okay, and that's maybe I'm being overly
It is
polite.
definitely a phenomenon. And I said, literally just maybe a few minutes before I was talking to you, Mike, before we ran each other, I was talking to another guy, and I said, you have to just marvel at what they've created here. Like, and so that's it. Whether there's plenty of criticisms that you could make, and is it right, wrong, healthy, and different? But dude, it's a spectacle. And no matter what, there's a nod, a feather in the cap, nod of respect, 100% to the Roller family and everything that is the world of wrestling out there in Tulsa, because Tulsa is now a special place in the wrestling community because of what those guys have done. So I bow, so it is
There's
what
not a whole lot more you can do, because you're right. It's a spectacle. Before we get going too far deep into this, Jake Elkin, Clad Wrestling, go ahead and plug anything you'd like to before we get started. That way we can kind of move on.
Yeah, appreciate it. So we run, I run Ironclad Wrestling in Birmingham, Alabama. We have a club like everybody. We do a huge youth thing, which I think is maybe a little unique from other clubs. But then the big push that we have that I think really distinguishes us and really where my passion is what we call Ironclad Methods. So we've created some really cool stuff that's really unique in the coaching space, and we're really focused on like training and developing and higher levels of thought and everything as far as wrestling goes for everybody else. So you can find all that stuff. We have subscriptions and all that stuff. IroncladMethods.com. Check out courses, all the best things. It's all out there. Appreciate it.
Well, here's the thing, right? So Joel and I were kind of kicking back and forth the idea of talking to some coaches across the country. And I said, in my head, I was like, well, who are the best coaches around the country that maybe don't get, like, everybody knows Jody Stripmatter is one of the best. But I think that there's like a handful of guys like you that are the best in the country that really aren't busted through yet, right? You got a couple world teamers, right? U17, U17 world medalist, not last year before. And like, there are cats around the country like Zach Dominguez that maybe people don't know, been at this game for a long time and have really cemented themselves in the wrestling space. Maybe people don't know about things that are going, and part of it is geography, right? You're not
100%.
In the biggest wrestling hotbed in the country, but that seems to be changing, right? Like, let's be honest, right? Like, before Cliff and Lee, Georgia
pioneers, dude.
They weren't exactly the hotbed of wrestling that they are now, because Georgia's for real.
Yeah, it's the real deal now, 100%. Yeah, we drive across state lines and you get real good wrestling all of a sudden. It's pretty dope.
Yeah. So tell me what it's like for you coming up in Alabama, going back to Alabama, and getting people like the community there to buy in to something that seems to me is probably always going to play a second fiddle to football.
Dude, at least second. It's more like fourth or fifth or sixth, I guess. I'm now we're fighting field hockey. I'm like, what is field hockey, dude? Get out of here. I can't get that negativity out of here, man. I can't deal with that. But yeah, man. So Alabama's different. I always tell people, like, it's not like coaching in Iowa and there's been, I tell you, this place has been the demise of a bunch of coaches who came in, young bucks and hot and zealous dudes who are really good wrestlers, and wrestling, being an athlete and a coach are separate skills anyways. I think everybody here knows that, but some dudes who knew wrestling, and there's like, they were getting pissed and having like more, it was really a problem because there was this gap between like their knowledge and the buy-in of athletes. And they were like, don't you freaking know? Like, I know what I'm doing, and it's really it's a weird thing because somebody comes in and thinks I'm just going to treat this place like I would Pennsylvania or Iowa or wherever I'm from, and it's very different, man. It's very different, and so it's very unique in the way that you get to treat athletes, and you can't press on them because they're just going to go to the lake, bro. Like there's a lake 20 minutes away. I don't care where you live, and so yeah, it's just different, man. There's not wrestling culture, and so we're pretty obsessed with instilling wrestling culture and trying to create not just something, but the right things. There's a little bit of wrestling, but it's a little more like wrestling than it is wrestling, and so we have to combat some of that,
Whoa. Can you please, for the layman, because I know exactly what you're talking about, sir. Can you explain to them the difference between wrestling and wrestling?
Wrestling is a little more like what you get at the county fair. It's like what you get out in the outskirts. They have a whole bunch of folks get together on a really nice wrestling mat, maybe some Resolite, you know what I'm saying? And they just sort it out. And I don't know that there's a whole lot of technique involved, but there's a whole lot of sorting it out.
Yeah.
And so they could use, they don't lack fervor or passion for the sport. They, it's more on the technical side. Good people. I got some relatives that are probably there. You know what I'm saying? Like I grew up that way. We're just trying to change it,
That's not easy, Jake.
No, man, it's and we usually, I think the most painful thing is like you go to a tournament and I mean, we know all the officials, most of the officials used to wrestle for me or something or on the national team with us. And so they know if I'm talking about the rules that, hey, like you messed up the rule, here's the rule, whatever. Well, like the fans think that I'm a cheater because I know the rules. And I'm like telling other people what the rules are, and so it's just a little different, man. I mean, we grew up, that's kind of why I'm so passionate about it is we grew up in a family, first generation wrestlers, me and my brothers, and we all coach together now, but have a gym and everything in Birmingham. But we didn't know anything better. And so my dad's answer to everything was just work harder. And I think that's kind of the battle cry of wrestling, right? Is like, you just got to work harder, just work harder. And I got sauced up. I mean, you have these experiences different times throughout your career, but one that really stands out, I lost in the semis of Super 32 in like 06. And I got blitzed by a guy you probably know, Mike, Jamel Jones.
Mm-hmm.
Jamel Jones, and he pieced me up, and I was like, I don't think work harder is the answer anymore. Like, like your first year, 2, 3 years in, like when you get 5 years in and you just keep doubling down on hard work, like at some point you're like, dude, the people aren't really outworking me. Like they're not really outworking me. Like there's something else,
Mm-hmm.
And so you start to wonder about like the tooth fairy and stuff, you're like, maybe these dudes know something that I don't know. And that really began as a junior in high school, upcoming senior, I guess, began my like obsession about technique at kind of a different level, where like everybody says different things. And like I remember being in a camp with this guy who was, all these college kids were showing his technique and stuff. It was sick. I was like, man, this is awesome, coolest moves ever. And then this coach came over and was like yelling at all of them, was like, we're not freaking doing that. Snap down, go behind, snap down, go behind, And I was like, this dude sucks. Like, who is this guy? He doesn't even know any good. Like, what's he showing us? This dude, get him out of here, I didn't know that guy's name was Tom Brands, So I was like, but you start, when you're trying to listen to everybody about wrestling, I mean, as a young buck, and I think, young guys coming up in wrestling can all relate to this, is that you don't really know who to listen to. Like who, if we all three have a different opinion, like about a technique or a way to do a single leg, well, who's right or which one is really better, So you have to learn, you have to kind of get to the end of the rabbit hole to come back and make a real good decision. So I always talk about having a craftsman mindset when you're talking about technique, and you got to have some philosophy and things that lay in behind that. And yeah, man, there's just a lot to that. Right. And so you have to figure out who to listen to, and as a young, coming up in the South, like you didn't know who to listen to. And it's also a very different era. I mean, I think the flow started like when I was a senior in high school, they were passing out t-shirts at senior nationals. And so very different era. Where you have exposure.
Yeah. No, look, the technique of it is just such a I don't want to say it's a small slice of the pie. But what's funny, there's so many of these dopes making technique videos on the internet.
Oh my gosh, dude! Do not get me started.
And I say that.
Can we go off there and talk about this? I would love to name drop privately. Like, can you believe this guy?
Well, here's the truth about it, right? Because like, what makes me more qualified than the next guy? I don't know, nothing at all, really.
I think the answer is, I don't mean to interrupt you, but I think the answer is you do the work. Like, because I spent more hours doing the work. So anybody can pull up their phone and video something and talk about it, but like, you know, how many hours have you spent doing this, right? I mean, you have a full-time job in the world of wrestling. Like, so some guy who's 40, 50 that teaches and coaches wrestling 3 months a year, like how many hours does he have in the game? Because I'm spending 40, 50, 60 hours a week. And that was sort of, I had some, I mean, Mike, you already know all this, like, but there's some imposter syndrome when you're a young buck and you're like, man, like, surely, like, they know, right? Like, do they know? I don't know. Like, and then you start realizing, like, wait a second, I'm the expert, like, you know, and I'm saying I in the first person, but people, you know, Mike, you're one of those guys, right? It's like you said, there's a lot to it, and there's a conversation that's not really being had.
Fine. I agree with you. Look, on my tax returns, it says wrestling coach. So it's like, hey man, we ain't the same thing. You know, like there are cats out there that are for sure part-timers. And like, but I guess what I'm trying to say is the technique is kind of the easy part. It's kind of like, you said, who should you listen to? You don't know who to listen to. I think a lot of that gets sorted out quickly enough to a young kid coming up today. Why? Well, because you can go back and see videos of Jake Elkins on TikTok and on Instagram from years ago. I would say 85% of the guys out there doing technique video realize that there ain't no money in it. and like, if that's the only thing that they're doing, then they're probably wasting their time. But the longevity and, like you said, the hours accrued become the litmus test or the measuring mark. I mean, the first Behind the Dirt was shot. I'm not kidding about this, by the way. I'm fairly embarrassed to admit this. The first Behind the Dirt was shot on an iPhone 4 that was propped against a kettlebell that was sitting on top of a plyo box. And my dumb ass didn't even have the good sense to edit out the part where I went. And that's not a joke. That's the truth.
Hey, that's how it be, though. You know what I'm saying? That's how it be.
Yeah. So I guess what I'm trying to say, but that something tells me that that's still floating around out there from 2009, 2010. You know, so like the longevity becomes the and this is true with club coaches too, and I want to kind of get into that. The longevity becomes your street cred. I always kind of admired the Russians for putting reverence into longevity, right? Because when you bring up Bubasar Satiev and you bring up Brandon Slay to them, they go, who?
Yep.
Who? And they'll literally say, who?
100%.
And I'm like,
it's crazy.
Slay, but he won a gold medal. They're like, he won.
Are they the same though? Like,
right? He won one, and so you can't, you can't.
No disrespect to Brandon, right? But
no,
that is 100% how. And when they say it to you and you're in their homeland, you're like, I think you might be right. Like, it seems more true here.
Since you bring it up,
on American soil, I might disagree with you, but
for sure.
Man, I don't know. You make a strong case,
right? So 9 versus 1.
Yeah.
Yeah, but we think about the poster boy. You know, Brandon Slay was a good-looking kid. He looked the part, looked like an action figure. Like he wore the stars and bars pretty well. You know, so it's like And then there's Bugasar, who looked like your drunk uncle,
Yeah.
but it was the greatest of all time. He does, right? Like he looks like drunk uncle.
Looks like your uncle, 100%. It's like, yeah, dude, he's a plumber actually on the side. He does some electrical work.
So I guess I've always kind of admired longevity. And I remember you taking me out for a drink in Huntsville, Alabama one time. And I remember sitting there going, all right, this kid's in it for real. This dude's in it. Like, we're in. And so that was when I remember, my immediate relationship with you kind of sparking. But and you said it earlier, how does one in Birmingham, Alabama decide to have longevity in an industry that's not exactly prospering? Like you can open up in central PA tomorrow and there'll be 20 wrestling clubs around you and you can all be successful. I don't know if that's the case in Birmingham, Alabama.
Lots of poor broke folks be trying to do that around here for sure. Man, it's different. I think no matter where you are, you have to understand the culture, right? And so it takes some stubbornness for sure, but you have to be able to speak the language, right? I mean, so like I grew up playing football, baseball, and was way better. Honestly, I'm an idiot that I turned out to be a wrestling coach. Like, I mean, Jesus, what was I doing? But you have to be able to go out and I don't care where you're at. Everybody wants to fight over the cream, right? Everybody wants to fight over the cream and recruit and just try to steal kids from a club and kind of steal some clout and go stand in the corner some really good guy. You really have to take this like origin approach where you go, hey, I'm just going to go find a bunch of kids and you have to have a crazy long-term like plan on it. I mean, we treat wrestling as like glorified PE. Like, hey, dude, we're just going to make you a better football player. It just starts out, hey, we're just going to make you a better football player. Hey, we're just going to help you with baseball. We're just going to help you with those things. And then they slowly, like, hey, I'm going to do this instead of playing basketball. And then that turns into, hey, Johnny's kind of small. Like, I don't think he's going to play football this year again in middle school. He's an 8th grader and he weighs 115 pounds. And we just don't think he's going to be 6 foot tall. So you get that kid. And now because you've built a little bit of a foundation with him, obviously, I mean, you understand the math over there afterwards, right? But you get the kids that stick around. And then what I think is really most empowering is now we have, you have some success stories. You have some kid who went from, he lives in the middle of nowhere, armpit of Alabama, and then he signs a big scholarship or is getting interviewed by the news crew because he had an undefeated season and, beat a bunch of kids that are terrible, but he's got some clout and they're like, well, I think I want that, and if you weigh 100 pounds and you play football or baseball, like you don't get a chance to do that. And so there's something super, like gravitating of like, dude, that little ugly kid is getting interviewed by the news crew right here. And he was a dork, 18 months ago. And now here he is on Fox 6. And so I think other kids just are kind of drawn to that. Wrestling is incredibly entrepreneurial, right? And so you just go, dude, I want to do that. And then there's really not a lot stopping you short of access to some training and the willingness to do the work. And so you just kind of sell them on that, man. It's slowly turned into cool. I mean, everybody loves wrestling, dude. You just got to be able to talk to them in a way that they understand. And then when they can see the dream, they're in. So
culture, that's how you build culture, in my estimation.
100%.
It's not by putting on a pedestal your top athletes. It's by putting on a pedestal your middle of the road athletes. I think that and like that's and like I think you said it, that's really hard to do with the old school mentality of like, look at this show pony that I've created. And like that's not where it's at. And that's not like my greatest achievement as a wrestling coach. None of you would ever know the kids' names. Like none of you would, like you'll never know their names. They're PE teachers in central New Jersey right now. They're not mixed martial arts fighters in the in the UFC. They're like Anthony Cassar was going to be pretty good whether he came to my club or not.
That's right.
like something tells me
Wait a second. You mean to tell me that it wasn't whatever? Like,
well, what's funny about that is I get a lot more credit than I should for a kid like Kassar because he came to me late. He came to me late in high school. It's not like he came up through my program, but he didn't qualify for the state tournament. He didn't qualify for the state tournament until
that's
he
gnarly.
started coming to my club. Now, I'm going to put that on pause and tell you this. He also hit a seriously beautiful growth spurt right after the club. He
Well,
also
listen,
gained
you
30
can't fault a
pounds.
guy for being on time, you know?
That's exactly right. Right. So like, but like, if you just kind of look at it on paper, you're like, Mike's the man. No, Mike is not the man. So
That's pretty cool.
But yeah, but there's a kid that I can remember, Jake Elkins. I had to teach this boy how to skip.
Those are the most rewarding ones, right? Like,
Absolutely.
you go, dude, nobody wanted this kid.
No.
And what's funny is how quickly everybody forgets that. Like, we have some kids right now that everybody's fighting over. And I'm like, dude, I remember when nobody wanted to work with that kid. Like, everybody was like, he's not worth my time for a private lesson. Or like, I'm not going to free. Like, dude, he's going to have to figure it out. And when you go target that kid that is kind of the dog that would be at the pound and you turn him into a champion, like that's pretty, to me, that's really what's most fun because dude, that's how you change a kid's life. You know what I'm saying? I mean, dude, I sucked at wrestling. I was terrible, dude. Like, I was terrible. Anybody who looks back and talks about how great they were is mistaken. I remember being terrible. It wasn't that long ago. You know what I'm saying? Like, luckily, some coach looked at me and was like, he kind of works hard. Like, he ain't so good looking or he's so sharp, but like, I think we could work with that, And I mean, I think that's the thing that should be championed in this. I was talking to Jared Lawrence a couple of days ago, and he was talking about that with his kid. He's like, he's talking about the P&L stuff and whatever. And he was just like, we're not trying to send every kid to college to wrestle, but like, if a kid learns how to be a hard worker, how to be successful, he learns this model for success and then goes on to be successful in anything else. Like, that's a huge W. You know what I'm saying? I mean, I've got a kid right now, Ivan, we call him Drago. He looks like Ivan Drago. He's crazy. He's a freaking huge dude. And he's going to play football at Air Force. And I mean, I would love to, put him in college and see what he would do as a wrestler, right? But like, the dude's going to Air Force, like, and he's going to play football. What a huge win, It's hard to look at that. Or one of my favorite kids is a kid who graduated from West Point and didn't wrestle at all in college. But I mean, and I don't know. I think his parents probably give me, like you said, they give you a little too much credit. Like I think his parents are good friends of mine, and they credit me more than they definitely should. But like Will say, because of wrestling, like I dreamed bigger and wanted to go do these things, and he's graduated from West Point. Like, that's pretty freaking sick.
That's
so
pretty sick. That's pretty sick.
Yeah, it's way cooler than me. You know what I'm saying? Like,
like he will have far better.
Maybe he'll be a donor one day.
Let's be honest. You and I, like you said, we chose poorly. We chose to live a monastic lifestyle.
That's right.
So how do you? Well, all right. Let me rephrase. We talked about the culture buying in. We talked about the technique, and that's kind of easy. What other things about starting a club in an area that isn't Western PA or Central New Jersey? What am I not thinking about? What advice could you give to someone that is starting a club in, I don't know, New Mexico that they can't get from me? Because I started a club in a wrestling hotbed. It was simple. I had to open the door. I mean, I had to open the door. I had to build street cred and mat cred in certain respects. But what am I not thinking about the most when I'm opening up a school in New Mexico?
I think the number one answer is you have to create advocates and turn those guys into leaders, right? So you got to go find the right people don't go searching for wrestling people. It's not even like, first off, you're probably not going to find one. And if you do, who knows if he's the right guy? Like the right guy is a character, integrity, outgoing, wants to be a part of the something, right? And then you can honestly, like, learning, like you said, technique is the easy part. You can learn the wrestling thing, dude. Like, but you got to have the right people. If you have the wrestling part right and you have the wrong people, the whole thing it'll all collapse at some point. 3 years, 5 years, 6, 7 years is, you'll be trying to hold it together and it'll all implode. You've got to, or explode. You've got to have the right people. And so start with like quality leaders and turn them into advocates for wrestling. Let them see what is so special about wrestling, whether they have ever wrestled before or not. And as they become advocates for you, their influence and who they are, like that, their reputation in communities will spread like fire, and they'll bring in 5, 7, 10 kids with them, and they'll bring in 5, 7, 10 kids. And so don't be, be patient, but find the right people. And that sounds so cliche to find a quality, integrity, all things, but
it's not.
That's the rare part,
Yeah, that's wonderful.
How do you go about finding those people? Obviously, is that through personal networks? Is that through, connections of friends? How do you go about finding those right people within your network?
So we're I live in my hometown or whatever now, right? I moved back to my hometown. I'm from Birmingham. And so some of those people are going to find you, to be honest. When you start doing your thing, some of those people are going to find you, and you're not even going to know how or why this guy showed up, but you're like, what's up, dude? But then when you start getting really intentional, you need to go find who are the leaders in other sports programs, right? So like, don't try to recruit all these year-round kids day one. Like, go find kids that play football, baseball, or in our case, maybe it's another sport wherever else you live. But for us, I go find football and baseball players and go talk to the guys who are leading some of those teams. Hey man, what's up? What's your name, dude? Take them to lunch, go talk to those guys and just tell them who you are, what you're about, find out about them. Don't ask anything of them. Just get to know them. Right. And man, what's up? You're coaching this football team. What's the deal with why are you passionate about football? What got you here? And as they start telling you about themselves, then you figure out who they really are. And again, you're kind of finding out, man, this guy, he don't need this. Like, he's out here volunteering and taking time away from his family or whatever. Like, this guy obviously cares about kids, and in a meaningful way, not in a way that's like, oh, about the kids, or, there's two phrases: grow wrestling and about the kids or for the kids. And I freaking hate both of them because they're
100%. First of all, the people that toss those around don't know what they mean.
Yeah, dude. 100%.
They don't know what. Boy, I'm keeping it clean for you, Joel Shaw. Boy, am I keeping it clean for you, Joel Shaw. Whoo! Don't get me started. Grow wrestling.
Yeah,
I literally bite myself every time I hear it because I'm like, you have no idea what it means. You have no idea.
Some of that grow wrestling stuff. Yep, that stuff's pretty good. You can buy it like feed and seed at the store. I think I hate it, dude. I hate it so bad.
Sorry, I interrupted you, but yeah,
no,
you're 100% right.
And so you just got to go find those guys. I literally we have a meeting at the beginning of the season. So we have 3 full-time coaches here, and they, we all wear different hats and do different things, but 3 full-time coaches right now, and then we have like 3 more that are pretty heavily, 2 or 3 more that are pretty heavily involved. They're volunteers. But we have a meeting at the beginning of the youth season. So we have 5 campuses running right now that run youth wrestling. Right. So, and we're in all these different satellite communities. And so I have a meeting, we'll bring them on. I'm like, hey, listen, if you're a baseball dad, whatever, I try to get all the men to come in at least. And I say, hey, listen, man, we're trying to raise men. I've got 99.5% boys, in my program. And so say, hey, listen, we're trying to raise leaders and create leaders. Here's the deal. If you're a baseball dad, if you're a dugout dad, you coach first or third base or whatever, you keep the book in another sport, or you help the guys on the sideline in football, like, I need you out here. And so year one, maybe you're just observing, maybe you're just helping chaperone and herd some, you have these little kids, it's like herding cats. Just keep them all together and just be helpful. If a kid starts crying, pick them up, dust them off, get them ready to go, and so we have literally a class, and we teach them what that looks like. Here's the expectations. You have to go through these steps, and You have to go through certain training with us, and we just make sure that they believe what we believe, right? Simon Sinek, does a pretty good job talking about those things, but you got to find people who believe what you believe. And so we explain what we believe and why we think that's the way and why other ways are broken. And people usually go, that makes enough sense that I'm with it, and so we're slowly creating leaders. And our goal is to have, I want 25 little teams, in this area. And I would love to be able to do that next year. I think that's probably ambitious. We're probably 2 years away from that, but we're going to create a whole community where we've got 6 or 8 mats down every Saturday at one location. And it's just like a baseball park. Like you show up to the ballpark and we played on Saturday, And so we're in the process of training leaders. And that's what, again, that's kind of our passion and our focal point right now is leaders, and leadership is the real bottleneck in wrestling right now. And so we're trying to do that locally. And then we also offer that, nationally and stuff too. Right. But it's a cool thing, man. It's a lot of fun. You got to go find those guys that are already involved and then train them up in the way that you need them to.
I have to ask you this. Okay. So I'm tasked with starting something similar. Are you getting any pushback? Because to me, that's a great goal, is to have just basically form your own little league. Like, why is that? That doesn't seem too hard, I guess. But are you getting any pushback from local organizations like USA Wrestling, like a local chapter of USA Wrestling or anything like that?
We certainly will. So USA Wrestling we have a USA and AAU, and there's like this divide and whatever, and it's kind of fallen the way of AAU. They underserve our community here in Birmingham. They're doing a great job. I have my own criticisms, but they're doing a great job. So a whole bunch of volunteers, hard to say a whole lot bad about them. Right. So I'm not going to blast them, but our community in Birmingham specifically, they don't want to drive an hour and a half, 2 hours to a tournament. Not when you started wrestling. Like they're used to driving 8 minutes from their house to the ballpark for baseball or football or whatever else. And so that's what they're accustomed to. And so we're trying to provide that service. So they're going to push back. They're going to give us grief. They already give us grief, like in freestyle Greco season when we participate minimally locally, like enough to support and everything. Right. But we'll show up at a tournament. We have 80 kids wrestling on a Saturday in a tournament that has 150 or 200, and it's like, sorry guys, we're going to run, so we do that once or twice and provide some financial support basically for the organization. And then we compete elsewhere as much as possible. So we've kind of dealt with that in freestyle Greco. I haven't really had to deal with that necessarily yet in the folk style season with AAU, but we will. They will definitely have some pushback, but again, I don't freaking care. You know what I'm saying? Like, it is what it is. We could show up and wrestle. Our people would prefer to show up and wrestle themselves already in most cases, because we could do that 3 or 4 times a year and then travel on the other ones. Mm-hmm. And so, we definitely have a dedicated travel squad that will travel the country and wrestle, but when we're talking about local youth wrestling, we have 150 kids in our youth program right now. Like, that's enough to wrestle each other, and they can get a whole lot of wrestling in a short amount of time and go home. Like, there's no reason you can't show up and get a bunch of matches and be done by 1, 2 o'clock and not be getting out of there at 6 or 8 o'clock. If we just cut down a 3-hour round trip drive, they're pretty happy about it. You know what I'm saying? And so they definitely don't like it, but entice me otherwise. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's tricky, man. We're dealing with some similar stuff here in Southern California, because while Poway is certainly kind of cemented itself as a national program,
100%.
There's really not much other than Poway in our immediate area, right? So getting our kids to go to our local USA Wrestling folk style tournaments is difficult to say the least.
My kids hate. When we have our so your Poway kids are like our club kids,
Mm-hmm.
Getting them to compete at a local tournament, they hate it. They freaking hate it. It's like pulling teeth to get them to go there. And I'm like, hey, we need to participate. It's important. But we show up to freestyle Greco state tournament, murder everybody. And I mean, no disrespect. I mean, look, there's some other guys that are good. We lose matches, but it's I mean, it's silly. You know what I'm saying? It's silly.
Yeah. And now that's not our case on a state level, right? Like, I mean, there's some real good
wrestling totally, yeah.
Up to towards Fresno and then beyond, up by Joel's area north of there. It's for sure there's some legit wrestling, but like our little bubble is very much power. So we have.
I would love to spitball you anytime about that, Mike. Too. I mean, I know that there's obviously a lot of that'll be probably some private conversation and strategizing and whatever. But
yeah,
like I'm not interested. It doesn't have to be my way. I always say it's not my way. It's the way. What is best? What best serves this community? As a club leader, my job is to serve our kids. And so what's the best way that I can serve our kids and parents? I'm going to do that. And if you offer a product and service that I need as a state organization, then we'll do that. But like, don't keep screwing me on one hand and then be mad when I do what we need to do. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so there's a balance.
Oh yeah, it's tricky. And I think next for us is elementary schools. I think we got to get this as a staple in every elementary school in the town first. Even if it's a 6-week season like it is in our middle schools here, that should be the intro. That should be the,
Are you talking about like NPE classes, or are you talking about like an after-school program?
Extracurricular.
So I think after-school programs are a massive, massive thing. I mean, I don't know about y'all's area, but like cheerleading, gymnastics, dance, like the baton stuff and twirling, like they do all that stuff at a bunch of the schools, especially some of the more bougie schools. After school, it's loaded down. I mean, you walk in there, I'm like, what? There's 100 kids in this gym. What are they doing? They're like, oh, they just finished like baton class. I'm like, what?
Yeah.
And so I think, but again, to do that, in order to do that and do it well, you need leaders, right?
Wow.
So you need a couple of wrestling mats, but whatever, you need $20,000. You need some wrestling mats, but you really need leaders, because that first experience to wrestling has to be positive. And that's what I'm obsessed about, is like, how do we make, like, we can't go recruit all these kids to come out and wrestle, and then they drive 2.5 hours to get to a tournament in the armpit of Alabama and have a bad experience because the Wi-Fi is bad. You know what I'm saying? Like, or some of these people, I mean, are wealthy. This dad owns a jet, and here he is. I've convinced them to wrestle, and we're in a gym that seats 350 people, and it's like, and it's hot or whatever. You're like,
and you can't go to the bathroom because you're gross. And
dude,
all those little things add up to the experience.
The wife is, they just had a expensive steak dinner last night and at Ruth Chris, and here they are, and she's like, listen, I'm not using the bathroom in there. And now dad's like, yeah, this wrestling thing sucks. Like this blows. This is what I wanted my son to do, but
no, this is all part of a fan experience that never is addressed. Never addressed. And it drives me bananas. Now, it's easier for us because we're in Southern California, and if you don't like the temperature in the gym, you can usually just walk outside, right? Yeah. And be fine, right? But yeah, if you're in freaking Minnesota, right?
Yeah.
And you're stuck in a crappy gym, and you're eating crap food, because that's generally what it is, and you're just having a bad experience. How can you blame them? How
100%, dude.
Parents, right? And they stay there for 6 hours. 6 hours? Is that necessary? I don't think that's necessary, Jerry.
So my pitch on this is, local, like for years, we've always kind of taken the cookies and try to put them on the bottom shelf. We were like, oh man, the problem with wrestling is it's too expensive. It's $20 to register. Like, I mean, that's the problem. We need to make it $15. I'm like, what? Double it, make it $40, and then have good food. Have some food trucks come in, do all things. Pay a staff to work the tournament. Hire a high school program to come in and run the tournament and go, hey, Y'all are going to take the day off. So dude, listen, this doesn't make entirely too much sense. I know that somewhere, I hope someone listens to this and they're already doing this somewhere else in America, because I want to hear all the things that they have to say about it. But you could, if you just raise the cost of registration and you say, I mean, dude, when you buy something on Amazon, it's cheap. When I buy it locally and support local, it's more expensive. It's literally more expensive.
Mm-hmm.
And so local wrestling, there's no reason that it couldn't be like boutique shopping, right? It could be a small batch, nice experience. You could be in and out, super positive. You could, if you raise the price, I don't care if you doubled the price. If it was $40, let's say it shouldn't be 50, but let's say it's $40. Okay. That could be a barrier to a few families that are going to do it. But to show up a couple times a year and have a positive experience, you could hire a high school team. You could have the high school kids officiate the tournament. You just need a very simple training program, which we're working on right now, to train the high school kids on the rules. They're going to screw up some calls, but dude, the youth officials already screw up calls. Who cares?
They're terrible as it is.
Yeah, like those kids are going to know the rules better. Then when you correct them and say, hey, actually, that's not the criteria for a takedown. It's this. You've got somebody in charge just walking around just helping them out, a head official. Like, now the kids are learning the rules. They're getting better at wrestling, and they're going to all of a sudden be less critical of the officials all the time. You know what I'm saying? They're not going to be they just got better, and they can all be there. They can just work for free all day long. But you say, hey, the best official on each mat. Let's say I've got 2 or 3 officials on a mat. Let's say I've got 6 mats or 8 mats set up, whatever it is. Like, the best official is going to make $50 today. He's going to make $100 today.
Mm-hmm.
And then whatever all this profit goes to, like, let it go to the high school team and be a fundraiser. Don't go wash cars. Don't sell cookie dough. Run a freaking wrestling tournament. You get everybody involved. Do it for half a day. Make a few G's and like call it a day. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. It makes entirely too much sense, and nobody's doing it. And so,
well, we are. I mean, yeah, we do that. It's a pretty, yeah. Like, we have carne asada French fries at our dual meets. Like, and guess what? They cost $12.
Roll Tide. I'm in. I'm in.
So, but do you see what I'm saying? Like, I'm not gonna serve. Like, Steve Neal makes pulled pork, and it's banging, right? Like, he'll bring
love it.
7 crock pots full of pulled pork, and we sell the crap out of them for $7 a pop. Okay, and he donates all of it, so it's pure profit. So anyway, that's the experience for the fan that we lack.
Yeah.
There's no criteria for the athletes to start to compete. I'll give you an example.
You're up. I'm all about this. Let's go.
I think so many rec programs, so many like kind of little league programs in each town do such a poor job of assessing ability and talent and for lack of a better term, just passion towards the sport. Like, if you're just doing this because your mom made you do it for a 6-week program to get you out of the house, putting you in the middle of the chaos that is a youth wrestling tournament is a terrible idea. It is
Could you say that again for the people in the back? Somebody didn't hear you on that one. Like, oh my gosh, it's the worst, dude. Hey, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to send my son.
Can we call it what it is for a second? You're half naked in front of all your friends.
Bingo.
And you're fighting another kid.
That's exactly what I was about to say. You know, it's a great idea. Let me send my 7-year-old who's like really struggling with self-confidence, trying to figure out who he is. He's terrified. He's scared of the barking dog next door. I'm going to put him in his underwear and send him out here to fight his friends and scream bloody murder at him.
And then videotape it and put it on Facebook. What are we doing? What are we doing? What are we?
You are not kidding, bro.
So my nephew, they live in New Hampshire. Again, not the wrestling hotbed that I grew up in. Okay?
It's not Alabama. I get it.
It's not Birmingham. No, for real though. Like, it's Salem, New Hampshire. So she's like, "What do you want to do this winter, Connor?" And he says, well, I see Jack, my son, on Instagram. He's wrestling. He's got big muscles. Let's do that. He goes and gets his dick kicked in by a girl. And like, they're sending me the video. I'm like, this is a bad idea. This is a bad idea.
What could go wrong? What could go wrong? You know?
I don't know. I just got my butt kicked by a girl in front of all my friends. Cool. That's my first experience with the sport. And
Mike, he's had 6 hours of practice though. Come on.
That's the whole thing. It's like he's been practicing. Well, he's been practicing for 3 weeks. What? Oh, yeah, well, it's twice a week. It's Mondays and Wednesdays. I'm like, oh, you're crazy.
No, we go to the Wednesday practice too. It's not required, but we go anyways.
It's just it's mind-boggling to me that like we don't, and again, I kind of get it because they do it with baseball, right? Like, you know, they go slap grounders to these kids, and then they have coach pitch. And it's like, yeah, this is kind of an extension of practice. No, like our practices look nothing like that event that you're about to drop your kid in the middle of.
Man,
and tell him to swim.
Go ahead. You have to paint the picture. The thing is, like, people just don't understand. Like, you have to paint that picture to parents. So when I first started coaching, I was like, listen, the best time to do this is whenever, like I know you don't know, I know you're not really ready, but the best time to show up is when other people also don't know, because I mean, roll the dice. Your kid might win and like it, you know, like other kids don't know either. And then quickly I was like, you know what? That worked out. Sometimes I was like, it's pretty cool, you know, but there are a few times it didn't work out. And I quickly was like, yeah, that's not the way, actually. That's not the way at all. And so now I'm like, hey, listen, like you don't. So there's some really interesting stuff. Panone that runs Level Up in Georgia. He has some he pulled some stats from Georgia. This is really interesting. Because I was just pondering this a lot, but if you don't compete your first year, I'm going to mess up the numbers now because that's just what I do best. But it was like, if you don't compete in your first season of wrestling in Georgia, he pulled all the stats from track wrestling in youth a year ago. Then there's a 90% chance that you did not wrestle year 2, which I thought was really crazy. If you don't compete in a single tournament year 1, 90% chance you don't wrestle in year 2. And so, but I really think that's probably some of the people who are going to be out anyways, right? So it includes a lot of, I feel like some of the data is probably off a little bit, but I thought that was very interesting. And I guess I'm just throwing it out there, not to redirect the conversation, but
no, it's an interesting concept. Like,
there's something to that, and I haven't figured that out yet. We just talked about that a couple weeks ago, and I've been pondering it, and I don't feel confident enough that I have the solution or the answer.
No, I don't think that there is a solution. I think it's I don't want to say the word strange, but it's like it's an interesting number because it begs a ton of different questions. I don't know what to think of that. I don't know I have to digest it and really consider it for a little while, because I don't think that it's a good. I think the other end of the spectrum is, well, almost every first year wrestler is expected to compete. So if the expectation is 100% and the option isn't given, do you see what I'm saying? Like,
yeah, you're onto it. Yeah, 100%. If the expectation is that you're going to compete, but you didn't even meet that expectation and you didn't compete at all, then what are the chances that you really come back year 2 at all?
Yeah.
100%. So
whereas I think, and I my brain lately goes to martial arts. These kids that are put in at 6, 7, 8 years old into karate they're not expected to kick each other in the head.
Interesting.
Year 1. So
how many of them would come back if it was full MMA class?
You see what I'm saying, man? Like, so the expectation kind of dictates the result of those numbers, and so that gets tricky. And I'd like to digest those that number.
Chew on it, because I want to. I mean, I think it's significant. There's definitely something to it, and you could pull. It's just good data. It's good data to look at and go, what does that mean? If this is a checkpoint that's true, what does it tell us about everything? So
how are we getting to that point, right?
But I think it's important to say, and I'm just gonna, again, we all know this. We've been talking about it, but like, you have to paint the picture for these parents, because they really don't understand what they're doing. So we like to I tell them, listen, how about this? Like, you have to understand your son is not listened. Like hopefully you don't shout and scream at him in matches, right? Or at home. I'm sorry, you don't shout and scream at him at home. Well, in a wrestling match, when you're trying to be encouraging, you're shouting and screaming, and like, this kid's going to have a meltdown. It's going to be a horrific experience, whether he wins or loses. Bad deal, right? Mm-hmm. And trying to get them to relate to that, I'm like, let's flip it over. Like, let's take you out there. You have to wrestle somebody in your boxers today, okay? And they're like, all right, well, let's go. And they're picking out who they're going to. But I get to pick who it's going to be. And your wife's going to watch. Your son's going to watch. Could win, could lose. And they're like, okay. And then if you give them 15 seconds to think about it, they're like, maybe that wouldn't be so cool, And I'm like, yeah. Now imagine you're 7. Like, like, what are you really doing? And so when you say, hey, look, you got to fight that dad right now. Y'all are going to fight. 30 seconds. Your name just got called. Let's go. And it's like, they start looking around like, dude, me, grown men, 40 years old. And if you can just help them understand, then they go, maybe we should wait a little bit, or maybe we could. I have seen, not 100%. We still have some crazies that we're culling slowly, but the level-headed guys, where they go, okay, I see that's a lot, and they'll cool their jets on competing so early, and they also are more calm in matches. I'm like, hey, Dad, you got to go back there and let us coach him and encourage him and do all things. And when he's done, you give him a hug. You know what I mean?
That's your job.
And
that boy, that getting tough for me. And you and I can speak about this another time, but that's getting tough for me as a dad. I cannot
imagine.
I cannot wait until that son of a bitch is in high school and I don't have to deal with him at all. I'm actually not allowed in the corner at the high school matches anymore. Not anymore. Not like I did something wrong. It's just CIF.
Well, it's just that one time,
It's just that one time I kicked the dog in the middle. No, I mean, it was just the CIF rules. I'm not allowed to. So, yeah, like, how about this? We'll end. I got one more question for you, but we'll end with this. I went to Tulsa this past weekend. That's where I saw you. There's a lot of. It's weird going to Tulsa because people they think they know me, right? Like, you do know me. We've been overseas together, but a lot of these cats are like, "What's up, man? Hey, it's good to." I'm like,
"Hey, what up?"
I don't know you.
Thank God I don't have that celebrity status. I don't think I would handle that burden real well.
It's like, I don't know you, dude. But there was 2 dads in particular that had seen me earlier in the day and said hello and took a picture and whatever it was. And then they watched me when my son lost. And he was devastated. Jake, he was so upset. He was out of the tournament. He went 4-2. I thought he did pretty well.
I watched him compete. He was scrapping. He looked good.
Yeah, he's a scrap kid. I was really proud of him. And he comes off the mat, and he's just like, there. He's like, this sucks. I'm the, whatever. And I go, I love you. And that was it. And I just gave him a hug. And that, I turned into dad. I took the coaching hat off real quick because he didn't need to hear, you got to move your feet. You got to move your feet. He didn't need to hear that right now. But to watch these dads watch me, I almost feel more proud of my reaction because of them.
Bro, listen, that is serious right there. That's a big, big, big moment because it's what we do for a living, right? Like, dude, I have 2 daughters. They're 11 and 12. I was trying to teach them to rollerblade at Christmas. Santa brought some rollerblades. Okay. Mm-hmm. Bro, I was like, this is not going to break me. It's not going to break me. I can teach them to rollerblade, and I can do it patiently without losing my cool. And before it's over with, my wife is like, hey, I think you need to go in there and let me do this. You just can't, dude, being able to hijack that. I don't think you can hijack that coach, parent, the parent relationship, the parent bias, if you will, right? Like, you can't, there's noise in the middle. And so for you to be able to go from, I am coaching you and I'm doing this well, and see that, hey, this has gone badly. Not because you did something wrong, because he lost, and go, hey, Coach Hat's gone, and be dad. Like, dude, that's
so
high
hard.
level. That's elite. That is elite, my friend. Serious nod of the cap to you.
Thank you. I appreciate it, because it was difficult, because every part of me, I've been a coach longer than I've been a dad. Let that ruminate.
Let me add this too. I'm sorry I keep interrupting you, but like, that's the example that has to be set. Like, that's the thing that people have, like, need to be watching, and they need to see, like, that moment and them seeing you. That's the most powerful moment of the weekend for those guys, or I think it should be.
Hope so. I truly hope so, because I saw them kind of like elbowing each other on the railing. Like, he's not yelling.
Yep.
Look at that.
That's 100%. Those are the things that should be championed about doing this thing that we do well. Oh, you shout and scream and yell and get kids tired at practice? Like, what?
That's
anybody can do that. Literally anybody. You know what I'm saying?
Most of them do.
Yeah, that's what they all do. Like,
all right, Jake, hey, I gotta get moving here. Thank you so much for the insight. We're definitely gonna do this again, because I didn't scratch the surface.
Dude, I have a million things that we could talk about as well, and I'm sure likewise. This is awesome. Appreciate it.
Yeah, tell people one more time how they can get a hold of you on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, whatever.
Check us out. We are at Ironclad Wrestling on everything. It's not Clad, it's Ironclad. Ironclad, and at Ironclad Wrestling on everything, or ironcladmethods.com is all of our training online stuff. Check it out.
Joel, you got anything else for us, brother?
That's it. Athletor Podcast 1 in the books. Thanks so much for coming out, Jake.
Man, appreciate you so much, Joel. Thanks, Mike.
Peace.